You feeling tired than normal? Not too sure what's going on? Well, you might have adrenal fatigue, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 hallmark symptoms you need to be aware of. Hey guys, Uriel Kim here, New York Times best-selling author, holistic nutritionist, and health expert, and the man to help you live a healthier, happier, fitter, and more prosperous life. That's a lot of stuff. Anyways, so in this video, I'm on the whiteboard again, and I'm going to walk you through 5 hallmark symptoms that you need to be aware of as it pertains to adrenal fatigue. But before we get there, what is adrenal fatigue? Well, basically, adrenal fatigue represents the fatigue or exhaustion of your adrenal glands. Now, your adrenal glands are 2 walnut-shaped, like little guys, 2 walnut-shaped glands that sit on top of your kidneys, and their major responsibility inside your body is to deal with stress. Okay, so just imagine that 2 little walnuts are supposed to deal with all the stress in your life. That's a big task. So it's no wonder a lot of people suffer from this. So what they do is under periods of stress, they are going to release stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. And these hormones are really important to help us prepare to fight or flee. It's known as the fight or flight response. That's the acute stress response that our body is hardwired with since the beginning of time. And that's good in an acute situation where we have to get out of danger or hunt for our food as it would have been, thousands of years ago. But today, the problem is that acute stress response has become chronic. So when people are dealing with chronic stress, that ongoing non-stop stress response is happening day in and day out. So emotional stress, physical stress, food stress, environmental stress, whatever it is, these are all forms of stress that are really taxing the adrenal glands and making it very challenging for you to feel your best. So how do you know if you have adrenal fatigue, and how is that different from just feeling tired? Well, sometimes they can be very closely related, and it's tough to say that, okay, you just don't have enough sleep, because there could be an underlying adrenal issue. So here are some of the hallmark things. I'm gonna give you a really cool 30-second test to take at the end of this to help you identify if you have adrenal fatigue as well, so don't go anywhere. All right, so first and foremost, one of the hallmark signs is low energy in the morning. So typically people with adrenal fatigue have low energy throughout the day, but mostly in the morning they feel really sluggish. Like you feel like it's like dragging yourself out of bed. It doesn't feel good to get out of bed, okay? And that's one of the reasons for that is because one of the hallmark symptoms or signs of adrenal fatigue is really an offset or an imbalanced cortisol response. Typically, cortisol should be highest in the morning, and that alerts the body to be like, all right, it's time to go. Let's get this back, let's get this party started, and it declines over the day. But in a lot of cases with adrenal fatigue, that rhythm is really messed up. And for instance, a lot of people with adrenal fatigue might have higher cortisol at night, which keeps them revved up at night, and that really offsets their circadian rhythm so that in the morning they feel like I just want to sleep again. So low morning energy is a nice little sign to keep in mind with respect to adrenal fatigue. Second is cravings for salt. Now, this is a big one, and I'm not talking about like you just had an intense workout and you just lost all this sodium, now you want some salt. I'm talking about daily, just like you have these like cravings for chips or French fries or salty foods. And why does this happen? Well, part of the adrenal glands, the cortex, like the tip of the adrenal glands, produce a hormone called aldosterone. And aldosterone regulates sodium and water balance in your body. But with adrenal fatigue, you're not producing a lot or enough of that aldosterone, so you end up urinating a lot and losing more of your body's natural sodium, which is basically salt. So your body is very smart. It says, hey, we're losing a lot of salt. We need more salt coming in. So if you have cravings for salt, there's a sign. Number 3 is a big one. So this one is really important because if you have a challenging time handling stress or dealing with stress, this you want to keep an eye on. So this can manifest itself in a number of different ways. So let's say you have a stressful event happen, right? So someone gives you a phone call and it wasn't the best news, or you get a letter in the mail from the IRS, or whatever it is, and all of a sudden it's like this little, you feel that stressful response in your gut, and all of a sudden you feel exhausted. It's just like warning you out. That is what I'm talking about here. Second is any kind of time during, like you have an emotional upset or you have an argument, you feel exhausted. When I used to play professional soccer back in my early 20s, I was a goalie, and I was always wondering, like, why did I feel so exhausted after my games? I wasn't running all over the field, but what I recognized is that because I was so vocally engaged in the games, and I was, really emoting emotion, like a lot of, vocals and emotion and so forth to, coordinate my team. What I recognized is that, well, again, I didn't recognize this till years later, is that because I was so emotionally invested and maybe not dealing with the situations in those games as zenfully as I would now, my body was under so much stress that I couldn't even deal with it. And I actually had adrenal fatigue while I was playing pro soccer. So that's one of the reasons I was so exhausted all the time. So being able to not handle stress appropriately is a big sign. And the reason this happens is because when your body produces cortisol is kind of like this, it's not a bad hormone. Like there's no bad hormones in the body. It's the balance or the levels of those hormones that becomes the problem. So if we have too little cortisol, then our body is not going to be able to deal with stress, because that's what cortisol does. It kind of creates a force field around your cells to allow each and every cell in your body to better handle stress, whatever that might look like for that cell. But if you have too little cortisol, then that becomes a problem. The other problem with this is that you actually have decreased immunity. Because what happens when you have too little cortisol is that you actually have increased inflammation in the body. So cortisol offsets inflammation. If you have too little cortisol or too much cortisol, both can contribute to higher levels of inflammation, and both of those are going to decrease immunity, which means you're going to get sick more often. And then finally, in line with that is basically an increased propensity or risk for allergies and even autoimmune disease. Now, as you can tell, I don't have any hair. When I was 17 years old, I lost all of my hair to an autoimmune condition called alopecia. At the time, I had no clue, but about 10 years later, or maybe not 10 years, probably about 8 years later, I started to figure out all this stuff, like nutrition, health, and kind of piece all the things together. And there was definitely an element of adrenal fatigue that I was dealing with as I was kind of going through my teenage years, because I was playing so much soccer and maybe not dealing with situations as zenfully as maybe I'd like to. But anyways, so if you have higher sensitivities, for instance, food sensitivities, environmental allergies, all these different things come into play, and allergies eventually can lead to autoimmune disease, whether it's losing your hair in my case, or Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune thyroiditis. But this is really important to consider, because basically the body's defenses are weakened and it can no longer deal with basic foreign invaders, which either comes from food or environments and things like that. So it's really important to understand that the adrenals are very, very important for helping your body feel its best. Now, I mentioned that quick little 30-second test. Here's what we're gonna do. You can go to your naturopathic doctor and get a full-blown hormone panel, which will give you a really good idea of cortisol, DHEA, all that good stuff. And that's important to know. But before you do that, I want to give you a simple test you can do at home. So you're going to grab a flashlight. This is actually not a flashlight, it's a marker, but I'm going to pretend it is. So you're going to go into your bathroom, you're going to close the door, and you're going to make sure it's pitch black. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to allow yourself 30 seconds to simply just, allow your eyes to adjust. And what's going to happen is they're going to dilate as they try to get more light into your visual cortex. Next, you're going to turn your flashlight on and you're going to shine it at a 45-degree angle right into your eye, and you're going to look at yourself in the mirror. What you should see is the pupil constricting, right? And that's happening because now you have a stress, right? This light coming in, and it's also telling your body, hey, we have enough light. We don't need to keep our eyes this wide open anymore. And what's happening there is that the adrenal hormones, adrenaline specifically, is shooting itself up to your head and constricting the muscles around your eye to constrict the pupil. Now, what should happen is in a healthy case, your pupil should stay constricted for about 20 seconds. But if you have any kind of stage of adrenal fatigue, what you're going to notice happen very quickly is the pupil is going to constrict and then start to pulsate and then dilate. If that happens between, let's say, 5 and 10 seconds and then 10 and 15 seconds, you have some adrenal stuff you may want to look at. Now, if you want help with this and you want to really kind of combat fatigue and feel your best again, I've got a great book for you called Fix Your Fatigue. And the best part is you can actually get it for free right now on this video. I've got a link somewhere, and in the description below, you can click on that. It'll take you over to the page and you can download the book called Fix Your Fatigue right over there. In that book, I'm going to show you basically my proven strategy to helping you overcome fatigue and feel your best. Go from exhausted to energized in 7 days or less. And I know that sounds like a big promise, but I've helped over 500,000 people with this very same protocol. And again, I've written the New York Times bestselling book, The All-Day Energy Diet, on this topic. So I'm kind of well-versed when it comes to having more energy. And the only reason is because I had so little energy for nearly 20 years of my life and I had to crack this code myself. So anyways, I'd love to have you grab this book. It'll make a big difference in your life. It'll help you really deal with many of these symptoms and help you feel your best. So once again, grab that today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Yuri Elkaim, and I look forward to seeing you soon.